So everybody had to come to Kabul, which of course is a feat in itself, and then participate in this international workshop where we introduced kind of contemporary art styles from around the world and engaged in the end with a really wide sort of language of art from the participants. And you can see some of these examples. This is the jury. These are 3 Afghans from quite different walks of life, all have strong cultural interest. Zara Breshna on the left is an Afghan architect. Tamim Sami is a kind of entrepreneur, businessman and an artist himself, and the other guy is a businessman too. Everyone, of course, who participated had a cultural role in or a cultural interest, but it was very hard to gather a judge and jury who were necessarily art experts. So this is, obviously part of the challenge of building up what you might call a kind of art scene. I'm going to move on faster. Shinkai Sanakzai is the girl here depicted. She won the second year's art prize. In fact, there were 2 women who were the winners in the first and the second year. It's been sort of dormant for the last 2 years, but it's now been started again by an Afghan back in Kabul, and so I'm glad to say it actually has developed a life. And actually, out of the first year's group, this young artist collective started up, who I'm going to refer back to, because amongst the group who started this new collective of their own, it's called Rushed, 2 of them were in fact artists and musicians and didn't know which way to go, but I think the rock festival, which I'm going to tell you about, won their hearts, and so they've decided they're no longer artists in the installation sort of sense, but are now musicians. But what's exciting is that it's a younger generation initiating their own projects, developing their own collectives and movements and their own festivals, and that is something new. I should probably just take you back a moment to Afghanistan under the Taliban, when, of course, as you know, music was banned. There were no, all forms of live music were forbidden. The prohibition of images, of course, prevailed. And it was a time when, obviously, religious songs were allowed, that goes without saying. Radio stations, TV stations, everything banned except one state radio station. So if you imagine the scene in 2001, 2002, and since 2002, 75 TV channels have emerged, 175 radio stations. It's estimated that 80% of the population own a radio, something like 30% have a TV now. I mean, the world has completely transformed. Obviously, the access to the media has changed, and this is radio and TV obviously affect the whole country, not just urban centres, which also have access to the internet. So then I just wanted to describe briefly this extraordinary TV series, because of this access to the media has opened up the possibility of obviously seeing TV shows and built homegrown TV shows that have really transformed people's attitudes to, transformed society in many different ways. Sitara Afghan Star, is the Afghan version of Pop Idol or X Factor, and was actually an adaptation of the Indian model, which is called Voice of India. This young woman, Lima, was one of the finalists in 2008 or 2009. It's a TV show that was enormously popular. I'm just going to find the statistic here. If you can imagine that desert, that cultural desert that was there in 2001, suddenly to a situation where 10 million, a third of the population, watched the final of this TV show. That is the most incredible impact, if you can imagine, to see a young woman taking the stage, singing to that enormous public. That is, of course, a transformative projection of female empowerment, of the capacity for women to take the stage, political or social. And I for one think that's a very, very powerful message and a powerful role that the arts and in accompaniment with the media plays in Afghanistan. Of course, it had its more conservative elements. there's no dancing on stage. The songs were mostly traditional songs, perhaps set to contemporary music, but there's a slightly wooden appearance of everybody sort of wiggling but not quite dancing. Men could move a bit more freely. But then, these are the stages in which social transformations happen. In 2009, I think, one of the finalists' headscarf slipped off as she kind of enthusiastically wiggled, exposing herself, without a headscarf to the entire country. However, today, the presenter is an Afghan-Canadian woman who wears a short skirt, never covers her hair. So these are the fora, one might say, in which transformations happen, social transformations happen, with their own risks attached. For example, the runner-up, this woman, Lima, whose headscarf fell off, whose headscarf fell off, had death threats from a number of mullahs in the mosques. She was declaimed. Her family had to be protected. She had to go and live in a safe house away from her family. She lived in Herat. She had to live in Kabul in a small sort of safe house. And her life was under threat for a long time. She then went to Tajikistan and got a music contract and was able to sort of start her life as a musician elsewhere. But of course, these are enormous risks for these social gains, which is inevitable. It's an example of finalists. So there's kind of different performances take place, some in contemporary. 5 minutes, right? I'm definitely not going to get through my material. From Sitara Afghan, the TV contest, to Sound Central, a Central Asian music festival that's been held now in Kabul for, I think, 4 years running, three years running. An extraordinary event, a rock festival in Afghanistan. This is something that, as one of the main organisers, an Afghan guy, about 23, Kasam Fushanji, said, you couldn't have dreamed of this 5 or 10 years ago. This was an absolutely impossible thing. And not only is it a music festival which takes place where it's open to the public, but you have to sign up on a secure website, and actually the venue and so on are kept in secret until the last days, because it is a risky thing both to participate in and to attend. For me, it's an incredible symbol of how a kind of youth culture is really taking hold in Afghanistan. And yes, I'm talking about Kabul, but you will find the same in the other urban centres like Herat and Mazar. And I'm just going to quote somebody here. Of course, one of the organisers was threatened by more conservative parts of their society. He was told that they had to stop performing or they would be, at risk. So now they wear masks. Obviously, these things are very upsetting. He says, I hate hiding myself, I'm sick of it. But of course, this comes with the territory. But then there's very nice quotes here from a couple of young girls who attended. Of course, mostly these kinds of events are attended by men, by young men, and they're not very open to women. And those who attend are probably from very progressive families with permission from their parents and possibly accompanied and taking considerable risk to do so, both reputational and otherwise. But the good thing is some women do feel brave enough to do that, and things are changing. There are not many girls who are brave enough to come to these parties, admits Nagris. There are many Afghan men who think it's wrong for a girl to come, but now we come and they can see it's not something bad, it's only music. We know anything can happen. Every day you walk out of your house, you know you might not come home in the evening, but we can't lock ourselves away and not enjoy our lives. We need to take the risks to live our lives like human beings. And I think I'll just end there because time's up, more or less.